In this video, we will solve one-step equations using inverse operations. Alright, so we have some steps that we're going to follow when we solve. We're going to locate the variable. We're going to identify where that is. We're going to determine the operation that's tied to the variable. In other words, what's bothering x? Then we're going to use inverse operations on both sides of the equal sign to solve. In other words, we're going to isolate the variable. Then we're going to check our work by substituting that value we get back in. Alright, first let's talk about what inverse operations are. Inverse operations are opposite operations that can undo each other. So what's the opposite or inverse operation of addition? Subtraction. So addition and subtraction are inverse operations of one another. Multiplication and division. These are inverse operations of one another. So we can use the inverse operation to undo the operation that's there. So first let's take a look at addition and subtraction. All right, we have our steps over here on the left. So locate the variable first. It's here. What's bothering x? Well, we have that plus 7 next to the x. So that's the thing that we need to get rid of. So what's the opposite of addition? That's using our inverse operations. We're going to subtract the 7. So when we subtract 7 from both sides, we get x equals -8. So our solution must be x equals -8. So let's check our work. Is -8 plus 7 -1? It is. So we know we got it right, and so our x value is -8. Here we've located our variable as m. What's bothering m? Well, we have subtracted by 11. So we need to add 11 to both sides to undo that minus 11. So m equals +2. So let's plug 2 back in to check our work. 2 minus 11 is equal to -9. So we got it right, and so our m value truly is +2. Right, our variable here is h. We have a +14 that's being added to it. So what's the opposite of a +14? So we need to subtract it. 9 minus 14 gives me a -5. The 14s go away, and I'm left with h on the right. So h must be -5. So h is equal to -5. Is 14 plus -5 9? And it is. All right, -15 plus w. So here's our w. What's bugging our w? Well, we have a -15 that's being added to it. So how do we get rid of a -15? We need to add it. So we have w equals 29 left. Well, is -15 plus 29 14? And it is. Here's the k value here. What's bothering k? Well, we're subtracting an 8 from it, so we need to get rid of that by adding. So we add 8 to both sides, and we get k is -13. When we substitute back in, we get -13 minus 8 is a -21. So -13 is our answer. Here is my variable v. What's happening to v? Well, we're adding a -4. So how do you get rid of a -4? You add it. So we have -1 plus 4, which is 3. The -4 and +4 go away, and we're left with v on the right. So v is equal to 3. Next, let's look at what happens when we multiply and divide in equations. How do we use inverse operations? So here's my variable. What's bothering a? Well, it's got a 4 next to it. That means that the 4 is being multiplied by a. So how do I get rid of multiplication? I have to do its inverse. So the inverse operation of multiplication is division. So divide by 4 on both sides, and I get a is negative 6. I can substitute back in and say, well, is 4 times negative 6 negative 24? And it is. So my a value is negative 6. Here I have negative 7p. Those are next to each other. This negative in front doesn't mean subtraction. The negative goes with the 7, and it's being multiplied by the p. So to undo it, we have to divide by negative 7. So I have a negative divided by a negative, which gives me a positive 8. So p is equal to 8. Here's the n divided by 5 is equal to 9. So what's bothering n? Well, it's being divided by 5. So how do we undo division? We have to multiply. So I'm going to multiply both sides by 5. When I multiply this side by 5, it gets rid of the dividing by 5. So all I'm left with is n. But I'm multiplying by 5 on the other side too. So I get 45. So n is equal to 45. Next I have 2 is equal to r divided by negative 8. R is being divided by negative 8. That's what's bothering my variable. How do you get rid of division? You multiply by it. So I multiply both sides by negative 8. And I get r is equal to negative 16. Here I have negative k is equal to 7. Our answers need to look like a positive variable is equal to a number. So we still have something that's bothering our k, which is a negative 1 here. So we need to get rid of the negative 1 that's being multiplied by k by dividing it out. So negative 1 divided by negative 1 is a positive k. 7 divided by negative 1 is a negative 7. So my answer is negative 7. Here I have what's bothering x. It's being divided by negative 6. So multiply by negative 6 on both sides. So I get x equals, because a negative times a negative is a positive, we get x equals positive 72. All right, let's do some mixed practice where we've got to identify the operation that's happening. So in 13, what's bothering x? We have a minus 11. So how do we get rid of it? The opposite of subtraction is addition. So add 11 to both sides, and I get x is equal to 8. In 14, what's bothering d? It's being multiplied by a negative 10. So we divide by negative 10, which gives me d is equal to negative 4. Here, what's bothering a? A is being added to 15. So we subtract 15 from both sides. So a is equal to negative 13. 2 minus 15 is negative 13. In 16, I have an h here. We're adding a negative 3. So how do you get rid of that negative 3? You have to add. So when we add 3 to both sides, we get h is 27. On 17, what's bothering m? It's being divided by a negative 3. So how do you get rid of division? You multiply. So multiply by a negative 3 on both sides, and we get positive 12 is equal to m, which means m is equal to 12. Those mean the exact same thing when they're backwards like that. So here I have 9 is equal to negative y. What's bothering y? Well, we have a negative 1 in front, so we need to divide it out. So I get y is equal to negative 9. Next I have negative 47 plus w equals negative 10. So how do you get rid of a negative 47? You have to add it. So negative 10 plus 47 gives me 37. So our w value is 37. In number 20, what's bothering p? P is being divided by 9. So multiply by 9 on both sides. What happens on the left is the multiplication undoes the division, so those cancel away. And I'm left with just p is equal to negative 81. Here, what's bothering a is being multiplied by a negative 16. So divide by negative 16, where you get a is equal to positive 4, because we have a negative divided by a negative. The k here is bothered by that negative 9, or subtraction by 9. So how do we undo subtraction? We add. So when I add 9 to both sides, I get negative 38 plus 9, which is negative 29. Next, we have negative 20 is equal to b divided by negative 4. How do you undo division? You have to multiply. So negative times a negative here gives me a positive 80. So v is equal to positive 80. Notice on number 24 what's bothering n. N is being multiplied by 6. So how do we get rid of that 6? We divide. So I'm going to have n is equal to, well, 0 divided by 6 is just 0. You can also think about working backwards and saying, okay, well, what times 6 gives me 0? That answer has to be 0.